Perfect. Okay, so I will kick off by introducing myself. I'm Amy. I work for Groundwork Greater Manchester. We're an environmental charity in Manchester and beyond, and I'm Partnerships Manager at Groundwork. And for the purposes of the Green Spaces Fund, I'm also the Project Manager, so managing the team of our wonderful Green Spaces advisors, of which Kieran is one of them. And we'll tell you a bit more about the wider team in a minute. So that's me. Kieran, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. You have joined on a really exciting day because round two successful projects have been announced. We'll tell you a bit about those shortly, and it's a hugely rewarding and exciting and valuable program, this that you're inquiring about. So, looking forward to telling you all about it. I'm a director at Sow the City. Our love, if you like, is helping communities to grow and live sustainably, primarily through fruit growing and access to nature.
Thanks, Kieran. Okay, yeah, so as Kieran said, today is the first webinar in our series for round three. There will be future webinars in case you want to watch those coming up in the next couple of weeks, and we'll touch on those throughout and put links into the chat and on follow-up emails afterwards if you'd like to join in on those. And yeah, so just kicking off about the fund. So it has really been championed and pioneered by the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. And these two images that you see on the screen here are of two key documents that have helped to shape the fund. So the documents launched over the last couple of years and have led us to this point. Last year, the Mayor launched a new Greater Manchester strategy that set out a high-level vision for the city region on the whole. And at the heart of that is creating a greener, fairer Greater Manchester, which is also what we are trying to do with the Green Spaces Fund that we're here to talk about today. So the 5-year plan was published a few years ago and sets out how we will go about improving the environment for everyone. I say we, Greater Manchester Combined Authority, improving the environment for everyone in the city region. And it also includes protecting and enhancing our green spaces. So it's right at the core of these documents. And in short, providing green spaces is at the front of these plans and is a really big priority for the Combined Authority and the Mayor. So these commitments are also echoed in the Mayor's manifesto commitments that were at the last election. And his sort of commitments contained a strong mention of green spaces in the region and the need to open them up to more people. Very committed to creating the fund, the Green Spaces Fund, to improve accessible green spaces in the areas that need it the most across Greater Manchester, and ultimately doing good for the natural environment at the same time as giving proper quality accessible green spaces to people, increasing access for everyone across the city region. And those core principles really thread throughout the fund, and hopefully that will come to life a bit more as we talk about the fund today. So just quickly talking through the aims of the Green Spaces Fund as well, and how those commitments translate to what the fund is looking for. And just to say here that the aims of the fund will be covered in a lot more detail at our webinars, our future webinars. We have a session on each of those aims outlined here. So if you'd like to find out more in detail about any of these aims, that will be available in a future webinar, and it is of course all contained in our Green Spaces Fund guidance as well. So just to quickly run over them, aim 1 is to benefit communities in greatest need of quality green space. So a lot of work is done through the fund to target communities that need this funding the most. Aim 2 is all about tackling our climate and biodiversity emergency. So how can the creation and enhancements of our green spaces improve biodiversity, wildlife, nature, and also make the region sort of resilient to the effects of climate change? And then aim 3 is all about encouraging and empowering communities to get involved in nature. So really increasing that connection to nature within the communities that we work with and who need it the most, and all of those wonderful health and well-being benefits that come along with it. So they're the aims, and again, yeah, they'll be covered off in more detail in future webinars. In terms of the timelines of the fund and where we're at the moment, so There was a first round of funding that was awarded in October last year, and successful projects, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail soon, are underway with their project delivery. So 21 projects were funded in round one, which is great. Our second round, as Kieran says, we have just found out the winners of, which is really exciting. So 31 groups have been funded this time across Greater Manchester for projects totaling just under £800,000. And where we're at now is waiting for the launch of round three, which hopefully you're all interested in and looking to hear more about. So that launches on Monday, the 27th of March, and further detail is on the website, and we'll talk a bit more about round three as part of our conversations today. So that's where we're at the minute. The round that you're hopefully going to enter into is due to close around June. That's to be confirmed, but that's the sort of timescale that we're looking at. But obviously great to get applications thought about sooner rather than later. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Kieran to talk a little bit more about the great groups that have been funded for round one and round two. So Kieran, do you want to take over?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, thanks, Amy. Yeah, I'll provide a quick overview of the groups, but then beforehand, just a little bit about the role that we as advisors have been doing, because this is a fantastic funded programme and a real commitment from GMCA and the Mayor. And unlike a lot of other funding applications where you perhaps get alerted to it and then pass the paperwork, you're kind of left to do it yourself. There's a real recognition here that because we're trying to reach some of our most communities in need, that people need help with that. Maybe a bunch of residents on a street that's a bit of a grot spot who really want to change and improve their environment. They've never done a funding application before, and they've never put together a plan. So they want to see change, but they just need help how to do it. And that's where there's a really rich team of advisors that come and see you, help you develop your project idea, introduce you to partners, and then all those little gory bits, how much does a new path cost? How much does a tree cost? What about workshops, and where might you source them from? So I just wanted to make the point that there's a really, really good resource behind this to help you with it. And I'm the advisor for Manchester-based projects and Trafford-based projects, but also food growing projects across the conurbation in its entirety. And then ditto we'll cover shortly at the end. There's a whole host of other organisations who have different specialisms and things like that. So don't feel you're just seeing this webinar tonight and then being left to it and good luck and see you in June. This is the start of a journey where we can maximise your success of getting the money. And if you get the money, we help you to spend it. So that's the fun bit, isn't it? Sort of like helping you to deliver your project. So just across rounds 1 and 2, let me give you a quick overview of the types of projects we've had. And I want to start with that one there where there's a picture of a bumblebee and a flower, Bugs and Beats. This is in Sale West. It's a sort of housing estate in Trafford, in sort of like out past Sale West. And this is all about wildlife and biodiversity and bringing it to this housing estate and making it more colourful and nature rich. There's quite an interesting idea behind this because the group are actually used music. They've included sound systems and DJs as part of their project to sort of demystify the geekiness of gardening. So when they're doing stuff, they play different musical genres to encourage local people to get involved. So what a fantastic idea that group has had there to maximise and empower people to get involved with nature. So they were around one group. Just announced today, we had another group who decided they wanted to create a giant pond and a little stream, a little electric powered stream sort of thing to bring the sound of running water to their neighbourhood. And it's seen as a way to really boost biodiversity in quite a bland urban environment, but empower young people to get involved with creating it. So there are a couple of small projects where splashes of colour, splashes of nature are brought in. quite low maintenance, that sort of thing. It could be an orchard, for example. Then we move into some of the sort of like larger, more urban greening type projects, if you like. And we've got market gardens that have been successful, for example, at the East Manchester Academy. Just announced today, watch this space, one in Collyhurst, which is all about food growing on a great scale. We've got other ones that are on a number of sites. It's not just particularly a little grot spot or an alleyway or that kind of thing, a patch of land. They actually comprise up to 10 like little patches of land. For example, around Stretford town centre, there's something called a tree trail there, which is about bringing nature, wildflower meadows like that picture on the screen just there, tree planting and a community garden on a whole series of sites, and then connecting them with green routes that are QR coded, so it's to encourage walking and exploration and nature. We've got others that, a bit like the picture behind me on the wall there of an iceberg, that have got a real emphasis on climate emergency. So it's about, you know, almost climate activism, getting people, local people involved in greening projects as a way to sort of help with climate change, but also develop interest in it for current and future generations. And then we've got other ones that involve places like alleyways and even ones in schools. I should mention, and I'll continue in a minute, that schools are eligible to apply. And in fact, one of the round one biggest projects was on a school, which is all about getting parents and children involved in nature. Do you want to move on there, please, Amy? So yeah, eligibility. So what I should say, it's not on this slide, but you know, I'm going to say it and hopefully you remember, but it's clearly in the guidance and it's clearly in the paperwork. But before you progress with any work on your application, one of the first things I'll ask you to do, or whichever advisor you get, is to see if you've actually got permission to do something with the patch of land you're interested in. You will absolutely need landowner permission before you commence. You know, without it, no grant funding can be issued. If you were successful, did all this work, we then ask you for permission or evidence of permission. If you don't have it, I'm afraid it's no grant. So really, really important right up front. First thing to do, let's find out who owns that land and let's go and ask them. We can help you with that. Don't worry, it's very rare for someone to say no. This is all great stuff. It's improving the environment, it's making places more pleasant, and it's possibly reducing the maintenance burden of I don't know, a housing trust or a local authority to look after that land. You know, you will be, you know, investing in it really. So permission is number one. And the second key area of eligibility is your project needs to be openly, publicly accessible. So we're not looking at projects behind locked gates or behind big high fences with barbed wire on the top that don't feel very approachable. They're about being in the public domain. That doesn't mean that we realise there are worries and concerns about antisocial behaviour in some areas, and might the investment get damaged. So it's certainly not overnight. You know, the general rule is from dawn till dusk. So 8 a.m. to 8 p.m, a bit like a public park. But it's got to be somewhere where people can openly access, not just the users of your group. So just to reiterate, landowner permission and being openly, publicly accessible, they're really key before you go any further. On schools with that, clearly I've mentioned that schools can apply. There's a different situation there because little people are using the resource during the day, perhaps, you know, as part of their education, and forest schools. The aspiration is that the asset that you create will be accessible as far as possible into an evening, and particularly at weekends. Some schools worry about that, and I can understand why, but there are some very clever ways we can help you develop your project to, you know, meet that eligibility criteria. So we can certainly discuss that with you. There's a list of organisations on the screen there. It very much is about the third sector, they call it, don't they, or the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. But top of that list, what should appear is even just residents. You know, it can be a group of people who want to improve their environment. You don't have to be constituted in any one of these things. And in fact, we almost prefer that a bit, because remember, Andy Burnham's aspiration is to reach our communities in greatest need of quality green space. And often these areas don't have these organisations set up. So if you are just a group of residents, we can help you, you know, with your application process. And then for all the boring bits, if you like, the paperwork bits and the insurance and bank accounts, you can get something called an accountable body, where perhaps someone from a local authority or a housing trust, a parish council, or someone else that's reputable will volunteer to look after those things for you. Yeah, next slide, please, Amy, I think. So how to actually apply for funding. So first things first, as I say, I really stress, like fantastic if you can do all this yourselves, that's brilliant. But even if you can do things yourselves, we're here as a critical friend. You know, contact us, send us your draft thoughts, send us your ideas, and we can help you review them. But I would definitely encourage, from our experience, to seek our help so we can come and see you. And that would almost be the start of the process, if you like. It would form the basis of your application, and develop the narrative around your project. What's the story? What's the issue? And how you're going to address it? That kind of thing. And for example, there was 18 projects in Manchester and Trafford that submitted to round 2, and all 18 sought my assistance. So it was really, you know, we got them to a point of submission, and they all sought help. Anyway, when you get onto the paperwork bit, there is a form to fill in. There's always a form, isn't there? But this form can be accompanied with photographs and other evidence. It's not a lengthy form. Don't worry too much. I think once you get to the point of completing it, it's maybe 2 days of time maximum. And that's like if you're a large project. Remember, I'm here to help, or we're here to help. And how it works is it's a classic Word document with a few questions, a few word limits, just so you don't write War and Peace or don't write anything. Bit of word limit, and we'll work on your drafts together, circulate it to partners, show people, get it to a point where we're happy with it. And then how it works when you want to submit it is you copy that information into an online form, and it's all done online, so we don't have issues around emails getting lost and not arriving or getting stuck in the system, that kind of thing. There are other few templates as well. For example, you know, when we see, what I always do is I get groups to start writing a shopping list of things they might want to apply for. When we actually come to submit, we'll need to get that costed up. And it's perhaps worth mentioning very quickly now, actually, what you can apply for. You know, this is the exciting bit, isn't it? So it's any materials related to your project, within reason, of course. You know, paths, trees, boulders, ponds, I don't know what, wheelbarrows, all the sort of things that make a green space project. It's also the labour that it takes to create these things. So if you need contractors to build paths, to build raised beds, to do whatever, dig out the ponds, then you can pay for that and all the machinery that goes with it. There's a real emphasis in this fund to get people involved, to get a group involved, because that all relates to maintenance. So, you know, we can help you out with costs to set up a volunteer group or set up a Friends of group and get PPE, refreshments, fun days out, that kind of thing. Fun days out to relevant projects, I should say. There's also things around community engagement. So if you want flyers, publicity, websites, that kind of thing. And even things contributing towards utilities costs and venue hire fees, that sort of thing. What I should mention as well, which it may be relevant to some of you as organisations, that you can include project management at 10% of your requested grants. So you could pay your organisations or yourselves, because when you get the money, someone's going to have to coordinate all this and make it happen, and make it happen quickly, because the Mayor wants this done by next March. And there's also recognition that things need maintained into the future, so you can ask for 10% maintenance costs as well. So if things need a lick of paint, a bit of wood replacing, or that kind of thing repaired in the future. So next slide, please, Amy.
Just to mention on that, Kieran, as well. Oh, can you hear a bit of feedback?
No, all good.
Oh. Strange. It's coming through me. Anyway, that's fine. Basically, just to mention that there is a new portal for this round, which is slightly different to how we've had applications come through in the past. It's still all online, as Kieran said. It is an easy-to-use portal. You'll sign up with your email address, create a password, and then you'll be able to log in, save your progress, type things out, come back to it later. But again, as Kieran said, the advisors are on hand to support with getting you through that portal and support with how to manage that, and just to say that the workings of the portal and how to actually apply will also be covered in a further webinar in more detail that we'll share links to at the end.
Thank you. Okay. So boring table time, but this is probably one of the most important tables you're going to look at with regards to this fund. So Amy mentioned some aims of the fund before. If you can follow my reasoning, aim number 1 is the top one on the left there, where it says benefit communities in greatest need of quality green space. So there's a real recognition here that across the conurbation, unfortunately, the poorer areas or the more deprived areas tend to have a worse deal when it comes to green space asset. A, it might not exist, or B, it might be run down, threatening, covered in litter, or not of a good quality. So that is the reason this aim exists. There are 3 sub-bits to this aim, which mean there are 3 sub-questions. And if you go across to the ends there, there's 20, 20 and 15%. So in total, this aim 1, if you follow me, equals 55% of the score. So the people that mark your applications, they possibly and probably won't know your project. So this aim 1 has to be really, really strong. Yeah. So the sub bits of it are, the first thing is you have to talk about issues with the green space or lack of it in your area. So what are the issues? Is it run down? Does it not exist? Is it lacking certain things? Then you talk about how your project will address that issue. So, for example, if you have no biodiversity in its patch of ground, your project will introduce wildflower meadows, ponds, bird and bat boxes, etc., to improve biodiversity. You create a positive from the negative. Ditto with the second bit. It's all about benefiting communities experiencing inequalities. So we want to hear about the socio and economic issues in your area. It might be cost of living crisis. How might the cost of living crisis be addressed through your project? It might be bringing in affordable, healthy food that addresses food poverty and gets people educated and involved in growing it. It might be things around health, mental health and isolation. Your project helps that by bringing people together to plant trees and manage a space, that kind of thing. And the third thing that's often overlooked, but I'd encourage you to get going on this as early as possible, is about being community driven. The mayor and ourselves want to hear that, people really want this. It's not just about you, one person having an idea, it's about a collective. So any examples of events you've done in the past or of demand, quotes might be a really nice way to do it. Make this sound that there's a real appetite for your project from the area. So that is aim 1, if I haven't confused you, but it's over half your score. So really, really important that aim 1 is, well, really, really important that all answers are strong, but particularly aim 1. That's where you've got a big goal to aim for. Aim 2 is all about biodiversity emergency. We've just had COP15 in November. I won't talk about the emergency itself. I'm sure you all know or are aware of it, but this is a nice one to start answering because it's all about what you're going to do about it. So it's about wildflower meadows, it's about hedgehog houses, it's about habitats, it's about educating young people, all people, about how they can improve biodiversity at home, that kind of thing. And there's a 15% scoring on that you can see in the table. And then aim 3, encourage and empower communities to get involved with nature. So how is your project going to involve people that don't normally get their hands dirty? I mentioned before about using music in Sale West. That's a really, really great answer there to engage people and get them out and about planting bulbs and planting vegetables. So think about what you're going to do to get people, out the houses, out the schools, and actually, creating nature-rich projects. That is also 15%, 1-5. So for the three aims, we've got 55%, 15%, and 15%. Clearly, that doesn't add up to 100. It's not an aim, but the extra scores below that you'll see is about being sustainable, deliverable, and realistic. So deliverable, we need stuff that can be done by next March. That's the deadline for you to have stuff done, which is exciting, isn't it? Because it means things happen and we're not sat here for years thinking about them, but they need to be deliverable, hence the landowner permission. Sustainable as well, we realise that there's, often there's a lot of appetite for things to be done. People get all excited at creating them, and then in 3 years' time, there's a bit of a rotting mess and everyone's given up on it. So make sure things are robust. It might be a low maintenance project if there's not huge numbers of people involved, or they might be sustainable where the things are sourced from that you build it out of. Is it locally sourced recycled timber, for example? And the final ones, is it realistic? Is it fitting, and how, are people going to enjoy it, basically? So really, really important table, and I hope that scoring overview provides you with the sort of weighting, because someone like a head teacher will be marking your projects and they won't know it other than the piece of paper that they read. Next slide, please. I think I possibly covered this, didn't I, before? But just, this is again a reason why we're here to help. But there's two key things where back to aim one again about socio and economic issues in your community and the availability of green space. There are a couple of maps to help you with this, where you can bring them up on your screen, punch in your postcode of your project site, and it'll tell you, the deprivation score for your area, and also what access to green space is like. Basically, on this deprivation map, darker colours for this fund is good. So the darker the colour on this deprivation map, and it says there IMD and a score of 1 that Amy's hovering over, that means indices of multiple deprivation. So all the statisticians out there, people in local authorities who, do all these calculations or whatever, means that you're in the top 10% of deprived wards nationally, which is, is very fortunate for this fund, because that means you've almost answered that question just in a few words. You don't really need to expand much more on that social and economic issue. That is a tick. If you fall into a lighter coloured area, that is where we need to start, because obviously blanket statistics don't always tell the story, and there's been many examples of that. But you will need to develop much more of a narrative about the need socially and economically in your area. So that is the first thing. We won't show you the access to green space map tonight, but there is another similar one like this. And again, advisors can help you with that narrative and help you make sense of these mapping tools that exist to answer those questions. So next one, please, Amy, or is it over to you now, I think, isn't it?
Thanks, Kieran. So yeah, Kieran's already talked around the really fantastic advisor function that we have for this fund, which is quite unique, and of which Kieran is one of our advisors. But just to talk a little bit around who they are. So we are a collective of multiple organisations with lots of expertise and experience in the environmental space. So we've got Sow the City that Kieran represents. We have Groundwork, which I myself work for. And we've got some other advisors there. We have RHS, we have the Lancashire Wildlife Trust, and we have City of Trees as well. So as Kieran said, we sort of act as a critical friend to help you complete your application form and do all the technical support, but also there to, share ideas, to create a real vision for your chosen green space together. We can draw on examples of past work that we've done, expertise that we have in the environmental space. and also ideas from other projects that we can share with you as well to help bring that to life. We also carry out targeted engagement as a team. So if we know that there's an area that is in real need, or if there's an area that maybe hasn't seen many applications for the fund as of yet, our advisors are always working hard to go out to those areas, to link in with their connections with local authorities and other charities that work in that area, to get some interest or to talk about the Green Spaces Fund to see if a project can be developed there. The real uniqueness of this partnership is its specialisms, and we come together every other week, work in the same space. And as Kieran has sort of mentioned, his specialisms are in food growing, and we have different specialisms across the partnership, so we can share learnings and sort of talk about different project ideas together based off of their specialisms as well, which is really unique. We do have an email address that you can go to directly, the GSF Advisors email address, which I'll share again in the chat and is on our website, but that takes you through to our central inbox, and then you will come through to me, and then I will link you in with one of our advisors based on which area you're in. So just to talk a bit about who they are and in which areas. So you've met Kieran here tonight covering Manchester and Trafford. So for Bolton and Bury areas, we have Emma. So Emma works for the Lancashire Wildlife Trust, and she focuses on nature recovery, well-being, habitat improvement, wildlife, and all of that good stuff. We also have Katie, who has been the advisor for Stockport and Tameside, still in place, but we also have Agnes as well starting, who's also on the call here today. Hi, Agnes. So yeah, she will be the new advisor shortly for Stockport and Tameside areas from City of Trees, and their specialism being all about tree planting. We then have Lydia, who covers the Rochdale area. So she's got lots of experience working in Rochdale and groundwork. Our specialism is sort of eco streets and also the connection between climate change and nature as well. We have Stephen, who works for Groundwork 2 and covers the Wigan area. And then we have Nina, who covers the Oldham and Salford boroughs, and she works for RHS, Royal Horticultural Society, and their specialism is sort of gardening, horticulture, and all of that. So we do try to match people and projects up with advisors based on area. It works really nicely like that, especially where advisors have already got connections in those areas. But also we can sort of, pair you up based on what your application is looking to do and what the specialisms are that we have within our great team. So yes, details will be shared within this webinar and afterwards, and you can find all of the information on our website as well. But yeah, just to really say that they are there for you. That the support is great, and we all work together to make sure that we are giving you as much support as we possibly can. So even if you think that you've got everything sorted and you just want someone to help you with the final bits and checking over, or if you're at the complete other sort of stage of the process where you think you might have an idea but you really need someone to help develop it and help you through the process, then that's exactly what we're here for. So please do use the advisor service where you can. So that leads us on to space for questions and answers. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I will stop the recording here too. Give me 1 second.